In this episode of Risk First Stars of Software, I'm joined by Brittany Istenes, an open source strategist and change leader who has spent her career helping large organizations figure out how to work with open source in the real world. Brittany currently leads open source strategy and AI change enablement at a large US financial institution and previously helped build and run the open source program office at Comcast. Along the way, she's developed a reputation for turning what can feel like abstract ideas, open collaboration, InnerSource, AI transformation into practical programs that actually move organizations forward. Brittany is also deeply involved in the broader open source community. She co-chairs the Open Source Readiness initiative at FINOS, helping produce practical guidance for financial institutions adopting open source. And she's an active contributor to InnerSource Commons, the community developing best practices for applying open source ways of working inside organizations. In this conversation, we talk about the reality of open source strategy inside big companies, how InnerSource helps organizations learn and collaborate before they contribute externally, and why managing the human side of open collaboration is just as important as the technology itself. Welcome, Brittany. Hi, good to see you. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Rob?
Yeah,
Doing
I'm
well
very well.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Happy to be here. Excited for your podcast.
Do you want to tell the listeners about who you are a bit, or did I cover it adequately in that
Yeah.
intro there?
Also am a steering committee member for the To Do group, the Talk Openly,
Yes.
Develop Openly group. So I'm involved in that. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't realize that I was such a grown up now. It's pretty wild.
Catches up on you, doesn't it?
Does. Yeah, and then personally, like a little bit about me, I'm like a huge music nerd. I just love music. I don't know. It just brings me so much joy to my life. So yeah, particularly of
Awesome.
metal variety.
Well, let's get into it, right? So I think you and I know each other, or have worked together quite a lot on the open source readiness initiative at FINOS. And so really what I want to get into today is like risks around open source, and especially for large companies who are trying to make the most of open source and use open source effectively in their organizations. And this is an area where we've done an awful lot of work in mapping out
Mhm.
these risks and things. So like obviously banks and other financial institutions depend heavily on open source. Uh, there was that Red Hat report that said something like 90% of all software is open source. And that's completely true in banks as well. As a developer in a bank, I was building stuff, mixing in open source components my entire career long, left, right, and center. And it's only got more and more prevalent as we've got better and better components. But banks still struggle to engage properly with open source. Do you want to give us like a rundown of the top reasons why that is the case?
Yeah, I find it to be really, really interesting because open source is such a strong it's a critical infrastructure at this point. If
Yeah.
90% of everything that we're operating on is running on open source, it's mission critical. Core internet, cloud, enterprise systems, financial systems, healthcare systems, our government platforms rely on it. And like also too, when we think about it as well, like weakness in one project can cascade globally. And I think it's really interesting. And so since we depend on open source at its core, there's some core problems that we really need to address because we don't govern or fund it like infrastructure. And that is very, very interesting to me as something that's so important. And so, like, when the open source ecosystem fails, it's not just what used to be perceived as an engineering inconvenience, it's a business, regulatory, and ecosystem failure. And so there's some large scale risks that we talk about, but we could break it down into some core facets, like in regard to it's not funded.
Yeah.
And the issue with that being is free and open for everyone. Somebody is still building the software that's still being heavily used in all these particular platforms. And when you're one of the only people, you're the maintainer, and it's very hard to do. And you could get pretty burnt out. That's like one way that you can do it. You're supporting massive usage as one person.
Yeah.
How is that sustainable? And it's not your full time job.
Yeah. It's kind of magic in a way, isn't
It
it?
is.
I
It
kind
is.
of find well, I kind of feel like open source is kind of magic. Like the way like as you talked about it is it's infrastructure. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know, streetlights, roads, railways, all that kind of stuff. But they all get funded, usually centrally. Whereas open source is this kind of weird thing that just kind of magically appears when you have enough people in the internet and people are trying to help each other and build stuff that's useful for
Hmm.
themselves. Uh, it's a really interesting phenomenon. And the problem is it's almost kind of impervious to a regular funding model. It's like, I think people would like to own it, and they would like to be able to carve out bits of it and say, this is my
Mhm,
bit of open source. But the whole licensing approach around it is preventative of that. And
mhm,
that is both the huge advantage of it, but also kind of the thing that, and the thing that sets it apart, but also the thing that scares big financial institutions, because there's
mhm.
nobody in control of it that they can go and choke the throat of when something goes wrong.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm so glad that you said the word magic. I mean, think about our maintainers. Our maintainers are like unicorns. They are
Yeah.
magical. Like it's kind of incredible what they are able to do. And then, these maintainers are funding critical infrastructure. I mean, at the end of the day, look at the railway systems. There's
Mm,
computer backing all behind that. That's open source,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's just pretty wild. So I don't know. I think the formal funding model mindset probably needs to change. And you can't put a price on open source necessarily because there's still a level of altruism to it where they're
Mm,
like, if you're going to use this code, contribute back to it, but make sure that I get the attribution that I deserve and or also help me out. And I think that that's that level of altruism that is missing because everything is such a for profit gain in the current world that we live in. And I think that that mindset needs to change.
yeah. Uh, and it's super hard, isn't it?
Mhm.
Frank Nagel did that report
Mhm.
about the economic value of open source, and I think he estimated that just open source software libraries are worth, was it $4 trillion? I can't remember what the
8.
number was. It's something $8 trillion,
Mhm.
and that excludes the value of things like Kubernetes or Linux or all sorts of other like device level kind of stuff that we just rely on every day and nobody even thinks about. So he was only thinking about like literally software libraries that you would include in software that
Mhm.
your applications you're building, which I think is insane. But in a way, it's slightly wrong-headed. Open source is such a critical it's such a critical innovation and such a massive innovation that it almost defies having a economic value attached to it, don't you think? It's like, what's the
I
value of fire? You can't say,
Yeah,
or what's the value of the wheel? It would be insane to try and put a value on those things.
exactly, and I that's such a good point that you just brought up there. It's just like, what is the value of a wheel? It is just so mission critical, and what I find to be very interesting too is that with that quantifiable value of $8 trillion, where did that money go,
Right.
right? Where is that money going, right? So it's just an interesting thought to have that I don't necessarily wanna share here, but it's something that I'll probably share sitting around a fire with a beer as I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, being like,
Wow.
"Where is that
Yeah.
money going?" Right?
Oh, well, I mean, I would guess that it's in the pocket of a lot of big tech companies, and to be
Eh,
honest,
I
I
didn't
take
say
that
it.
whole number with a pinch of salt. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
anyway, yeah. So like going back to the point though, open source
Mhm.
represents a huge dependency risk for
Mhm.
big financial firms, right?
Huge dependency risk, but you also need to think too, with that dependency risk, what are they really going to fall a risk on? When I go back to that example of just like the small underfunded teams, remember also something to note too that you point out very clearly in your book is that the amount of developers that are coming out is really not growing at the rate at which technology is.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And so that's very concerning because people are not necessarily giving back this time into this particular field. So what's going to happen if the infrastructure starts to go down? What's going to happen if those pockets aren't lined? What's going to happen as things start to go? So I think that that's something to be very, very concerned about because there's no incentivization at this
yeah.
point to keep moving.
Right, and so I guess that leads us on to, well, that's like one of the risks, right? I think
That's one
if we could
risk.
just like run through a few others, like
I have a
one
few.
key one. Yeah, go on. You carry on.
Oh, no, go for it. I just figured we'd start with one and then we could
I,
just
I,
go pick
we
through
could
them
go
all.
super deep on, yeah, but okay, so before we go to the others though, let's just talk
Hmm.
about what an open source program office is and like set the scene of that, because I think a lot of these risks that we're going to talk about
Hmm.
with all these open source related risks kind of fall into the remit of what an open source program office is for, right? Is that
What we initially thought open source program offices were for.
all right? So break
Right.
it down then. What is an open source
So
program office?
my personal philosophy is this is my personal philosophy, and this is an opinion all formed on my own.
That's what we're here for.
Okay, this is all formed on my own, and I'm sure I'm probably going to get eviscerated for it, but I really do believe in the beginning when open source program offices, right? Okay, so going back to open source is a critical infrastructure. All companies rely upon it. Well, comes inherent risk with certain things along the lines of security issues, licensing
Hmm.
issues, compliance. There's the beautiful word of compliance. And I do believe, just from what I've observed, opinion all my own, open source program offices were initially formed to monitor that risk, provide insights onto the risk of security and compliance, going back to the licensing point. And I think that that's how they initially kind of formed. But as open source program offices have evolved over the past however many years that they've been around, things got more involved in community, got more involved. Did you hear the dog?
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
he's
angry dog. As soon as you say open source program office, it sets him off, doesn't
I know, right? Yeah, he's like,
it? In fact,
OSPOs.
yeah, let's call them OSPOs from now on because otherwise
Yeah, we'll call
it's
them
just a
OSPOs,
mouthful, isn't it?
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
OSPO,
yeah. So
OSPO.
so we'll
Yeah,
call them OSPOs. So And then so I think as they evolved, companies realized that these offices are really integral because, what inherent open sourcerers do is we bring people together. We believe in the methodology. We believe in the free
mm,
for all. We believe in the absolute altruism and how magical really open source can be. And so now you're starting to engage your community. Now you're starting to give back to projects. You're giving companies this great reason where they can start contributing back upstream, which inevitably is now cleaning up your risk, right?
yeah,
And now you're starting to focus in on, making projects more stable, and it's absolutely wonderful and it's great. And then all of a sudden, new vulnerabilities got introduced. Many things happened where over the past few years where it kind of just was not an engineering inconvenience. It was a major problem having open source in your packages and your software and your projects. And OSPOs had to shift back to compliance and security. Right. And so I
yeah,
think it's the ebb and flow of technology, and I think that when you don't have subject matter experts that fully understand the end-to-end process of open source, that's a risk unto itself too, right?
yeah.
So, and lots of companies are not really bringing OSPOs back into the forefront, and they're just kind of running up against the same problems that they had back in the beginning when open source program offices were initially formed. Security issues. What do we do? Costs. Costs are rising. What do we do? So I don't know. I hope that
So
answers the question.
yeah, no, that pretty much does. But I'm
Mhm.
just so we wrote a website on this, right? We wrote this open
Mhm.
source readiness website. It's called it's at osr.finos.org, and we break down all of these risks, right? So like we've talked about like um code-based risk, dependency risk, there's strategic risk, legal risk you
Mhm.
mentioned, like the risk you're ingesting this code, what's it going to do? You've got operational risks like
Mhm.
the vulnerabilities you talked about or malware creeping into your code
Mhm.
base via open source. You've got reputational risks if you're interacting with open source projects on the internet and some of your staff say or do something stupid or introduce code that they shouldn't have. And then you've got like data leakage
Which
risk as well.
happens a lot, and that
Yeah,
happens a lot. Introducing code into your systems when you're not vetting and scanning things accurately, and we'll get back to that, but
yeah, yeah. We need to
that
talk
happens
a lot about that.
quite a bit.
And then the other big one, of course, is data leakage risk, right? The
Mhm.
idea if you're contributing on GitHub, you might accidentally paste in a bunch of like client information or company secrets or the keys to the cloud or something like that, and then you've created some massive security nightmare for your organization. So this is another thing that banks, well, especially the
That's
operations teams
that's
at banks, worry
developer
about.
burnout too, right?
Yeah,
It's either
yeah,
A, being super green or you're just completely exhausted.
yeah, yeah. Or you're just trying to bring down the place from the inside.
Yeah, it's fun.
So yeah, so we sort of catalog we
Mhm.
the whole idea of that project was to catalog all those risks and then explain to
Yeah.
firms what they have to do about them, right?
And so going back to that too, so you just laundry listed so many different things.
Sorry, yeah,
No, no,
I
which
do
is
that.
absolutely fantastic. But one thing to take note on that is that that laundry list of things was managed by an OSPO generally.
Mm, yeah,
And talk about underfunded. like a
Right.
project and a program, this is integral to your infrastructure. Most OSPOs that I've ever worked on was like a team of 4. And one of the things that I've been finding in the industry lately, because we're seeing what's happening in the given climate all across the world within technologies and layoffs and all of these things, I have met so many people that are like, well, I'm an OSPO of 1.
Yeah. I was about to say 4 is
So
generous.
4 is generous. So it's like, so then it's like almost if you're an OSPO of 1, then you're a master of none because you cannot physically keep up with the demand that's coming in, right? And I
Yeah.
think that that's so huge. So now all of a sudden, you're the core maintainer for your organization to keep things afloat. So I think that that's really interesting. And I think open source program offices need to get a little bit more credit. Stephen Augustus put it best. He's like, I like to use the tugboat analogy. So I like to say, like, OSPOs are tugboats in your organization. We pull the giant cargo ships in and out of port safely. Stephen Augustus put it best. He's like, I like to think sometimes we are the janitor. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you know, when you have a big party in your office building, you have a big party, and then all of a sudden you have this huge mess and everybody leaves. Well, who comes in but the lowly janitor, sweeps it up, cleans it up. Next day, you come back in, everything's beautiful, sparkly, and clean. And nobody even knew that that happened. Now, all of a sudden, you take away that person, and you come back into your office, and it's a hot mess.
Yeah.
Becomes a little bit more important.
Yeah, right. And I think because going back to the fact that like software is 90% open source, you're having a massive party every day with all those open source dependencies.
Oh,
So
it's like spring break all the
yeah.
time.
So you definitely need that janitor to keep
Yep.
a weather eye on the whole thing. So
That's why I like the tugboat better. I like the
sorry.
tugboat a little bit better because otherwise your ships are just all
Yeah.
left out to port and you can't do anything with it. And you're just in there,
Yeah.
just like, ooh, tugboat.
All right. So another thing we do on the open source readiness website is we talk a lot about like the maturity model. Do you want me
Mhm.
to break that down, or do you have that to mind? Do you want to talk about how that works and why it's important for companies to become more mature? What's the driver for that?
Well, I wouldn't mind you talking about it, but from my perspective, a maturity model for me, I think the most important thing is to aid in education.
Mm,
Fully mature and equipped within open source and all of the laundry list of things that, you know, you've listed out, which is so important, is just if you're truly mature, you understand the end-to-end flow, right? So that's one piece that I would want to add in, but I'd like to hear your take.
well, I mean, I think that's the nub of it, right? It's the point of the maturity model is to say, all right, these are all the different risks you're facing. And the mature organization is addressing all those risks in some kind of like managed, controlled way. Whereas the less mature organization is maybe winging it on a bunch of them and just being knee-jerk reactionary on a bunch of others and that kind of thing. So just to like recap what that maturity model looks like, we kind of invented like 5 levels. The first level,
Mhm.
level 1, is like people in your organization are using open source. Okay. And as an organization, you really have no idea what they're doing. They're just getting on with it. And so you have no idea of
They're
those
having a
risks, right?
party.
So yeah. So,
They're
so
having
I
a
guess
big old
level 0
party.
would be like nobody's using any open source. Level 1, people are doing it, but you've got no idea what they're up to.
Not a
And
clue.
a lot of people, when you talk to them, are actually kind of oblivious to the fact that 90% of all software is open source thing. And they don't think their organization is doing any open source. But then you talk
Or
to
they
the
think
developers,
Python. They think Python isn't open source.
yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. You say like, oh, are you doing any open source? And they're like, no. Do you know Python? Are people using Python? Yes. Yes, they are. And it's like, oh, okay, I
Mhm.
see.
Yep.
Yeah. You don't know what open source is. It's that kind of thing. But then
Mhm.
level 2 is you're starting to care about what open source gets used. You keep some kind of inventory of open source, and you look at the licenses of the open source libraries that you're using, and you start to think about the security and the supply chain, and keep track of vulnerabilities on the open source projects that you're using. So that's our level 2. And you would think that might be good enough, but then level 3 is you're contributing back to open source. And actually, I'm going to stop there for a minute. Do you want to explain why is it important for firms to contribute back? What's the point of that? Why would that be a useful thing? What's in it for them?
What's in it for them is you have a seat at the table.
Hmm.
At the end of you have a seat at the table. So if you're actively contributing back to the project, A, you know, it's a more stable project for your firm. if you are getting your PRs accepted and the maintainers are really appreciating the help, you're shaping the nature of that project for your firm and inadvertently others. And I think that that's absolutely fantastic. Not only that, you're putting a better name out there for yourself because, reputation in this industry is big. We've all read the articles. We all know what companies that we do and do not want to work for. But if
Yeah.
you are actively helping within something that is giving so many people such a solid infrastructure, your name's attached to that. I'm not going to look at you and be like, oh, I don't want to go work for them. I don't. But then you're like, oh, maybe I do want to work for them because they're actually doing something helpful. So we talk about talent and talent acquisition through
Yep.
open source, but people have never really, they say it, but they never really get into the nitty gritty of it. Right. And I
Yeah.
think that's one thing reputational like, visibility in a positive light is something that we need to see more of,
Yeah, you're
and
not
that's
wrong.
just
I mean,
yeah.
companies like Apple don't struggle to get good developers, do they?
Oh, absolutely not, and also, as being
Yeah.
an Apple user, I really like their interface, and I did not get paid to say that. I didn't. I just really
But
like
so
it.
yeah, but you're right. So
Somebody
that's
asked
that.
me the other day I just have to say this, somebody asked me the other day I was like, I only used,
Right.
Keynote for my presentations, and they looked at me and they're like, "What's Keynote?" And I just was like, "What?" But anyway, you could probably if you wanna edit that out, that's fine.
No, well, I must admit I don't really use Keynote, but I do use a lot of the Apple stuff.
It's
Yeah,
literally saved my presentation time, like, creating
huh, okay.
in half. My presentations, if anybody has seen one, I like to think that they look pretty good, but, like,
They're very well engineered.
they very, very
There's
streamlined.
a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but
Um,
oof, I don't know, it makes my life so much easier.
so yeah, you hit a couple of the risks
Mhm,
there, right? The reputational risk and
mhm,
staff risk. So like yeah, that's part of it. And then yeah, the seat at the table thing, right? If you're making changes to the software, if your organization is making the
mhm,
changes, you're fixing the bugs that your organization cares about. You're also
mhm.
solving that dependency risk problem because somebody in your organization has a handle on the software, and if the maintainers disappear, maybe they can step in and help out. And
Yeah, and you just hit on something too that is another risk as well, is that those opaque dependencies. Right? If you have your
mm,
hands into software, you're really kind of working and you're understanding where things are being placed. You're getting deeper into your dependency graph, right? And so the visibility that you have is so much more clear if things were to break, and then you understand where everything lives, right? And then let's say something did break, no fault of your own, no fault of the project, things just happen, right? Something does happen, and then your stack goes down or whatever, certain, critical projects in your firm. Now that you're involved in the project itself, you can then go push the patch upstream and resolve it a lot quicker than waiting on that one maintainer to fix it for you later.
yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah,
that's
right. And there's a
so important.
So you've got the time scale there. This keeping to
Mhm,
your own schedules and stuff. That's really
mhm,
important. And then my favorite one, right, is the code base risk issue, right?
mm,
Um, yeah, if there's a if you have a project that you depend on, and then the maintainers disappear, or you want a change in that project, and you're not allowed to contribute to an open source project, you internally fork it and you own it internally, and then you make your changes locally, and then forevermore you're owning an open source project and looking after it and feeding it and
mhm.
uh, getting it wormed and all the rest of it. And anything that changes on the real open source project, you have to bring in. So like security fixes and things that happen in the real world, you're bringing those in. So you're just doing
Mhm.
work to keep your own copy of this open source project, the fork, to keep that alive. And this is we've done a load of work in OSR to try and figure this stuff out, right? And it's still ongoing.
You did a ton of work in that, the cost of forking, and you've done a ton of
Yeah.
work to, like, look that up. You and Tosha Ellison did a
Mm.
wonderful job with it because that report I definitely reference quite a bit internally and externally.
Yeah.
So I think maintaining an internal fork, I just think it's absolutely wild. And I think, you know, there's reasons I learned the other day where I kind of took my blinders off for a reason as opposed to like, don't fork ever. There's reasons to fork and to not fork, right? Depending on the severity, but not forking inside, but forking the project externally, making
Yeah.
your patch and doing that way is like the criticality of the time at which you need something done if you are not a part of the project, or this is a project that kind of not necessarily has been abandoned, but it's not really being maintained. But for some reason, some developer introduced this antiquated project in your tech stack, which is important for another reason for OSPOs. You vet the projects coming in. You vet
Yeah.
your dependencies that you want to bring in. If it's an old project from like 6 years ago and it's not actively maintained, I would tell the developer, find me something more recent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that way you don't have to end up forking this project that's already embedded into all of these things, you know? So I don't know. Something to think about there. Try to stay recent, but avoid forking if you can, and always push back upstream if it's a viable option.
I think it's a bit like the open source thing where probably a lot of organizations don't even know that this is going on. They
Oh,
don't even know
absolutely.
they've got all this.
When I did start chatting with you all about that and then being in the OSR kind of talking about this a little bit more, I actually worked with some really high level developers in my organization to be like, can we find if anything's been forked? And we were
Mm,
able to find 2 things,
okay.
which was huge,
Yeah.
but they weren't even being used. And I was just like,
Huh.
"Oh, whew." I don't know how that happened, but I think because it's, like, being so risk averse, like, they really dug
And
in the heel.
how did you find them? Because that's the
That was that was the problem. So who knows, maybe there's more, but we
yeah,
just, like,
right.
went there could be, but we just did, like, deep dives into, like, logs of our source code manager to see, like,
Right.
what projects are out there, who's really maintaining them, where do they live, like, and, maybe if they renamed it, like, steveschoolproject.com, I don't know, like,
Mm,
I wouldn't know if that was, like, a fork of, some random project, but, we didn't find too much.
yeah.
It was heavily
Interesting. Okay.
manual, though, and, like, if I wouldn't have asked, it wouldn't have been done.
No. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's a hidden iceberg. But I mean, that kind of brings us onto the ROI question, right? Because, and
Well,
you
maybe
alluded to
I'll
this
come
earlier,
back
right?
and do more
OSPOs,
digging.
huh? Sorry.
Maybe I'll do more digging and be like, "You were right, Rob, it was an iceberg." But yeah, I'm sorry, go for it.
Yeah. So, like, as you were saying earlier, OSPOs generally are not like super well funded. There's not tons of staff in them, but nevertheless, the people in the OSPO kind of, they have this bag of risks that they're managing, but
Mhm.
people are always saying, well, what's the ROI on having this, of running an OSPO? What's the ROI on open source? Why are we doing this stuff? And yeah, it's difficult to just point to risks and say we're managing these risks. You have to like
Mhm.
generally turn up with numbers, right? So what's your take? Like, can you break this problem down and explain it a bit better tonight? Because you're working in this area much more than me.
Yeah, so the ROI and contributing to open source instead of just consuming it.
Mm,
Mm, that's something I'm gonna be very candid with you that I have not, upskilled with yet. It's something that I
yeah.
do find very challenging because one of the things that I do find day to day is, like, in my day-to-day role and job is that we're so busy that the ROI iceberg's always looming,
Mm,
but I've
never get a
never
chance.
taken never get a chance to really tackle it, never
Yeah.
get a chance to really think about it, and so that's why, like, I have to rely on all of these external reports to, like, justify it for me and upskill me, but that's kind of my one of my goals for 2026 is to really dig in more, but, like, that goes to show, maybe not everybody in an OSPO can really talk to this. Right, I could talk about cost avoidance, but I can't necessarily talk about return on the investment, right? I
Yeah.
can talk about the projection. I'm really good at talking about what cost was avoided by doing that, but I can't really talk about, like, cost saved.
Well, that's a really hard question. It's a difficult question, to be honest.
It's a really difficult question. I'm
And
not there yet.
it's I think also, I mean, the Linux Foundation are working on building tools for this. Hopefully,
I look forward
we'll
to
get to
seeing
play
that
with those soon, and
calculator.
yeah, we'll get to see
I
what they've
wanna
done.
Yes,
That'd
I
be
wanna
great,
get
I
my
think.
hands on that calculator.
What about so foundations? So that I'm just working my way up the maturity model now. So after you've got an
Mhm,
organization that's contributing fixes to projects, the next step is they're working with foundations and they're publishing their own projects, and they're kind of like ambassadors or champions for open
mhm.
source. They're really visible. That's the sort of the next level up in the maturity model, isn't it?
It really is. I think, like, not necessarily, yeah, foundations, working and partnering with foundations is good because it goes back to that seat at the table. It goes back not just the seat at the table of how the project is being directed, it's how the industry is being directed.
Mm,
And that's a whole game changer when you start to embed your organization in that. Also, you do get a higher level of visibility within the overarching community, not just within the project itself, to show that, wow, they are doing good things and they actually care. So your reputation immediately goes up. Also, too, what comes with foundations as well is, just to this point, how I struggle with sharing ROI and my thoughts on that and what it could look like. You have that level of upskilling that you get provided to not just one person, but you could provide it to your entire organization.
yeah.
You're really kind of sharing the whole, like, that level of community. I know what comes with foundations, it can be debated, and there's lots of different ways that you can discuss what they look like and how they're ran and all of these things, but at the end of the day, if they're ran in a way that is for the community, it's the best way that you could do it. And then also too, you get introduced on the cutting edge of, like, the newest technologies that are happening. You're actually sitting there with the thought leaders in the industry. 90% of open source exists in our critical infrastructure. Who's building it? Well, the people that are being supported, right?
Mm,
And so I think that that's a really great way to be involved, because now you're not just contributing upstream or doing that. You're ingratiating the entire mindset of how to be stable, secure, and supported and great for the community in that level of maturity. Humble opinion.
yeah. Well, I'm a bit biased, I think. Because I work for a foundation, so my opinion's probably not worth anything here. But there's good sides and bad sides, right? Do you want to?
Yeah.
Can you maybe try and break down why you think it's important for like a financial services firm to join, probably FINOS, but maybe or why should firms join foundations? What's the argument for you?
Well, that was what I just mentioned was the argument
Yeah.
there, right? And
Sorry.
and I
Yeah.
do no, and I think that's completely fine, but there is something to add to that. Let's talk about financial institutions. Let's put them on the table. I think it's really important for financial institutions to sit into a foundation and embed themselves into a foundation, A, because they're older.
Right.
They have been around. There are banks that have been around for 150 years, right? Could you imagine when you dig in to that old DOS server, the guy in the basement with the stapler, back in my day, we plugged the things and the chips of the things, he's probably still
Yeah.
there, right? And things might still be running on these things. Like, they're not, but, like, the amount of technical debt that you have, the
Yeah.
amount of education that you are lacking, the amount of people that have been there for forever that have still been doing things the same way. And that's no dig to financial institutions, but there is a upskilling gap there for real.
Yeah.
Like, there is, it's just an opportunity for you to level up your game, because also remember, the landscape of technology is rapidly changing. And I know we haven't said that two word or
No,
two
we'll say it
letters.
later. Yeah.
We're going to say it later, but it's changing faster than they can keep up.
Yeah.
And right now, everybody's trying to pretend that they're a subject matter expert, but they ain't,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. I think you've hit the major one for me there, which is
Mhm.
yeah, the culture and the technology and the culture in financial institutions it needs things like open source foundations to like
Mhm.
move it on and allow. So
Plus, that's
obviously
where all the cool
foundation.
kids hang out.
You've got you've got you've put me off now.
Sorry, it's true. It's
Uh,
true. You guys let me in there. I don't know. I'm the nerd.
yeah, I think what was I saying, Brittany? You've got
I totally distracted the heck out
it
of you.
just completely thrown me off track.
No, no, what you were saying is, how damn it, Rob. So, no, honestly, what we were talking about was the rise of foundations, hang on, the rise of, basically emerging technology, keeping everybody on
Right.
track with
Yeah.
emerging technology, and how not to, how these financial institutions are behind the grade with it, and how the
I've,
foundations are on top of
yeah.
their game.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's like a cultural change thing, isn't it? Like they
Yes,
rely on they're trying to adopt an open source culture, and they need something like a foundation to
it's
like.
true.
Yeah.
They're trying to
So
adopt this level of an open source mindset, right? They're trying
yeah,
to adopt it, but let's say not open source. They're trying to adopt
technology. Yeah. Yeah.
this cultural change with technology that they know nothing about.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that we have the end all be all answers for this at all either, but we are so good with change and growth and understanding the rate at which things do change and how they evolve that, it's not as scary for us, but we're not pretending like we know everything either. And then being able to have a seat at that table to actually learn and grow from other people from a different perspective, I think is really important.
Yeah. And then there's the obvious one, which is like the antitrust argument, right? Which is that if you're able to work with your competitors in a
Mhm.
foundation,
Mhm.
because it's all in the open and there's governance and nobody worries about you colluding. Well,
Mm-mm.
obviously,
Mm.
you can't collude in a public, governed open source space. So that's kind of a safe way to work with your competitors essentially on
Mhm.
stuff that is not competitively advantageous. Like this
It's
is
all
the
the
argument,
same
isn't it? Right?
stuff.
Yeah. If you're why, yeah. Honestly, Brittany, my career has been going to different banks and implementing the same things over and over again in different places. Like, and they're all like just down the road from each other. So I cross the street, go and get a
Mhm.
job in another one, and do exactly the same thing that I did in the last one. This is just
Aren't
nonsense.
you lucky? Mr. Banking Privilege. I could walk down the street and just get a job. Do the same thing. I don't have to learn anything new
I mean,
now.
did kind of elide several steps where
Yeah, of course, of
spend
course.
months doing interviews and going to different.
But it's repeatable
Yeah,
patterns,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
that goes and that even I hate to
It's
bring it
waste,
even
is what it is.
back.
Yeah,
It is waste, but that's why this maturity model was written by
yeah,
people at different banks that, understand because 'cause we're all doing the same thing. Sorry, he had to come visit. It
yeah.
is what it is.
Do
But,
you,
like
I,
mhm,
I've got a great analogy as well, which I'm going to throw at you. Do
mhm.
you, do you watch cycling, or are you into cycling at all?
I have a single speed bike that I put a backpack of beer on my back and go sit at the park and go cruising, yeah.
Okay, so this probably
Not
doesn't
really.
apply. But
No.
if you ever watched like the Tour de France or something like that on
No, I watch,
television,
like,
are you
American
American
terrible
cycling?
football. No, I
Okay,
don't want
well,
no.
so look, what happens, right, is that all of
Maybe
the
I will now.
cyclists,
Gonna get the
it's not that
internet's gonna
great.
rip
It's
me
not
a
that
new
great.
one, be like, "That lady doesn't watch cycling."
So anyway, what they do, all the cyclists, they'll like form what's called a peloton where they're all like cycling really, really close together, right?
Yeah.
Super, super close together. So if the guy at the front falls off, there's just this massive accident and everyone's in a mess, right?
Yeah, I
But
just keep hearing the Benny Hill music in my head if that happens?
but the point of it is, right, is that after a while, the guy at the front, because like the guys behind are slipstreaming, they're getting a bit of a speed boost. And the guy at the
Mhm.
front will like peel off and he'll go around the back and join the back, and then they'll carry on. So if you're on your own, if you're cycling on your own, you're basically facing all the wind. Whereas if you're in the
Mhm.
peloton, you're like working as a group and you can go faster. And so my argument is that a software foundation or an open source project is a bit like a peloton where you can work with your competitors essentially, because they're all competing with each other, all these cyclists, but they're also all helping each other. Does this make
Yeah,
sense?
it it
I feel like
actually
this
does. It
analogy has
actually
landed
painted
like a big pile of shit.
No, it didn't. No, it actually I'm just like, No, it did
What?
make sense,
Go
and
back
it
to the
does
bit
make
about
sense.
the bikes, Rob. What?
Tell
What are
me
they
more
doing?
about these bikes. No, that you're absolutely right. No, that absolutely does make sense because also if one crashes, they all crash in together.
Well,
And so you do
that
kinda
is a
have to encourage
downside of
and
it.
bring
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
But I mean, that is
it
also
is, but
true with open source, isn't it? That's why we have
it
things like
is.
Log4Shell and Equifax and all this kind of
Oh, yeah, solar winds, that
SolarWinds. Yeah,
how yeah, how little visibility that everybody had in their software supply chain. There it was just
yeah.
like, "Oh, that's not good." Right? Like, yeah, I don't necessarily always like naming names because you never know, I could walk in the door, maybe get a job. Just kidding. Be like, "You said that thing on that podcast." I'd be like, "Oh, no, I
Yeah,
didn't."
those CrowdStrike guys.
Yes.
All right, so that's a good segue onto
No,
what's the
it does make
biggest.
a lot of sense. I think
Yeah,
foundations are important. Like, I think it is good. And then also too, right? We're all learning together. We're all basically doing the same thing.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
All right, so actually, let's finish the maturity model up because we're done the first four levels now, and the fifth level is
Oh,
like your
5th level.
the fifth level is
The
like the
5th level.
strategic level, right? Where you're
Ah.
Google or something, and
Oh.
I should have got you to read up on this before we started, because you've forgotten all this, but we do.
No, I
We had
didn't forget about it. I can riff on it. It's institutionally ingrained in my soul, Rob. It's like Google. Ooh, Google.
yeah,
Fancy.
we had Peter Smolovic's writing lots of articles about this, like the value
Mhm.
of, so like companies like Google will basically use open source as a strategic tool. So they'll look at like Amazon doing an AWS and they'll be like, we should just do that. We should have our own cloud, but we'll just do that, but open source. And so that's where we get things like Kubernetes from. Or we should have a browser like Microsoft's Internet
Mhm.
Explorer, but we'll just do it open source. And so we got Chrome. What's the other one? Android, right? Android is a
Mm.
direct open source rip off, let's call it,
Mhm.
inspired by the iPhone, right? So they
Yes,
saw the iPhone
absolutely.
and they thought, this is a massive market. We need to get some of this. Let's do that, but open source. And so their whole thing is to be second, but also do an open source version of that proprietary thing.
Look at how stable their products are.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's the strategy.
They
If
do have
you
some,
are
yeah, some weird ideas, don't they? About like they'll have products that last about 6 months and then they throw them in the bin. But things like Chrome,
yeah, like
Gmail,
their big core projects, right? That's open source. They're developing on open source. They're contributing actively back to it.
yeah,
They're intentionally stabilizing their projects or their products. They're
yeah,
getting money off of this and yet feeding the whole machine.
yeah, and everybody else is helping them as well. It's win-win, isn't it?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, all of a sudden I went from a team of 3,000 developers, or a squad of like, 3,000 developers. I don't, that's probably really big for what they did with Android. Let's say 1,500 developers working on Android to all of a sudden now you're working on all in open source. It went to like 30,000.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
So it's just like, that's kind of strategic and really smart. And that's where, okay, that's the ROI.
yeah, right. I mean, yeah,
That's cost saving at its
there'd be
finest.
absolutely
Fabulous
no
cost
debate at all
saving.
in Google about the ROI of open source, would there? They'd be like,
Yeah.
"Uh, everything's everything's completely dependent on it. We need it."
Mhm. No,
Yeah.
yeah, that's genius. But, like, then you look at it, like, so in financial institutions, can't necessarily do everything out there in the open,
No, no,
you know?
obviously. Okay, so that's a good point. So
Yeah.
when should you open source something versus when should you keep it in-house?
If you see it's just a straightforward pattern that's not novel, it's just simple code that doesn't necessarily this simple package or something that really exists out there in the open that other people could use it. Let's say you're sitting in a foundation or you're sitting in a working group and you're like, "Oh, I can write this. Oh, this makes sense. Maybe I can contribute this back upstream. Oh, actually, the maintainer said it could just be a standalone thing. All right, well, I'm just gonna put out a sidecar to like a core project and then you just advertise it. I don't think
Yeah.
everybody should open source every single thing all the time because that's why we have like over what, like well over, 10 billion open source projects that are out there. And then it's just like a bunch of just debt just flying all over willy nilly. And then you have, unmaintained forks of projects that are 8 years old, like inside of your organization, right? Be strategic about what you open source. Don't just open source everything.
Yeah, well, once it's open source, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle again, is there? You
Exactly,
can't,
but what you're gonna put out there should be meaningful and
yeah,
reusable.
yeah.
Just like, you know?
There's a very long tail, isn't there, of just like, well, it's like that expression, 90% of everything is shit, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
true,
I
and
can't
it's
remember
about
who
to get
said
a
that, but
lot worse.
yeah, well, okay, so there you go. Do you want to mention the two-letter acronym now?
I don't want to. We can, but let's not end on that note. I don't wanna
No,
end
we're
on
not.
the
Let's
note
not end on it.
yeah, I don't wanna
Let's do it
end
now, and
on
we'll end on
AI.
something. Yeah.
Like I said, I've been
I mean,
dealing
you're
with it
right. So
all day today.
I'd spend a lot of my time thinking about what the effect might be of AI on
Mhm,
open source. Um,
mhm,
and honestly, I go back and forth on this quite a lot because I work on projects like FDC3 and I get all these
mhm,
pull requests from people. Well, actually, Chris gets all these pull requests from people going, "Oh, I've just vibe coded this into life," or you know, over
mhm,
the course of a weekend, I can put an open source project out that would have taken me a month to have written.
mhm,
Um, so I see the value of it, but yeah, at the same time, if it's making the top of the curve, like if it's increasing the productivity at the top of the curve, the long tail of everything else is also going to increase. And from
mhm.
an OSPO's point of view, That's a nightmare, isn't it, right?
Oh, it's terrifying.
Mm.
It is terrifying because you don't know what you could pull in. You don't know what they're building on. You don't know. And honestly, the rate at which organizations are expecting folks to develop, produce content, work right now is going to be unsustainable, in my
Mm,
opinion, with the rise of all of this. I think it's going to be a very interesting couple of years. Um, but we could talk about that later. I just think that there's gonna be so much going in there, and also too, with that, there's a level of thought. What would have taken you a month to code, right? Albeit now you can do it in a weekend, it's fast, you still put in thought into that, but how much additional thought did you put into your month-long project? How much strategy did you put into that project? How much foresight did you put into that month-long project that now it can be done in a weekend? Now are you
yeah,
looking back and you're cross-checking and cross-referencing everything that came out, that everything that you've built? Probably not. "Oh, it produced what I needed it to produce. Alright, great, push it, out."
yeah,
And then also, with that, you have this concept of your pair programmer, you have your QA person, you have all of that. If you're just trusting it to this particular model or this particular tool, it might be cross-referencing a lot of things that are incorrect. Like I said, just like the developer that was green that took down the code base, and I'm not saying that that could happen, or the developer that introduced like this huge vulnerability. If you're not cross-referencing and you're just letting it go, it could happen again.
yeah.
And it's not a fear, but it's just something that you really have to be mindful of with risks and governance and all of these things, but then you don't wanna necessarily over engineer your risk and governance because it's gonna hinder the innovation and it's gonna slow down your devs. So it's just like double-edged sword that's just like swinging all over the place, just trying not to hit you in the face, right? That's how I feel about it. It's like the positives and the negatives, and it's very, very, very tricky, and it's only gonna continue to rise.
Yeah, I mean, it is that's great. I mean, it is like a double-edged sword or like a chainsaw
Mhm.
or something, right? And if you're using it
Like,
like
in that movie Mandy, where they had, like, the giant chainsaws where they were, like, like, fighting each other, but then there's, like, double
oh, I haven't
chainsaws, it's
seen
pretty
that.
cool.
Okay.
It's good. It's kinda scary, but it's really good.
Mandy. Okay.
Mhm,
Alright, but I was just thinking, like, when you're using a chainsaw, you've gotta wear the face guard and the hand protection and
mhm, not in
so
Mandy.
heavy, heavy clothes and stuff. Otherwise,
Mhm,
yeah, you're gonna get a chain coming off and
mhm,
hitting you in the eyeball or something, and,
yeah,
yeah. So, yeah, it's all about, like, controls and
mhm,
safeguards and stuff like that, and I think we're just trying to figure out what that stuff means at the moment, but yeah, it's gonna be an interesting time for OSPOs. I think we talked about this at the OSFF in New York, didn't we?
mhm.
How everything's on an exponential tear right now. We've got
It's
exponential
intense.
CPU increases,
Mhm,
exponential new open source projects, data centers growing exponentially.
mhm.
What else? Um,
Well, I mean,
regulation.
also
Regulation is growing at an
regulations
exponential.
rising,
Yeah.
regulations rising, but yeah, just the rise of the models juxtaposed against the rise of the CVE is insane.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned that in your book too. It's insane, and that's something that we definitely talked about at, OSFF in New York. I was just sitting back and just looking at it because I gave that talk recently in Members Summit, and I was, looking back at what we talked about at OSFF, and I started forming it into the talk, and it started hitting me like, "Oh my goodness, this is going to really become an issue." And
Mm.
so, if you have pulling in all this open source software, and then all of a sudden all these CVE counts are rising. It is now your engineering migraine. It is your infrastructure, critical infrastructure migraine in your organization. What are organizations going to do? Are they going to start going back to vibe coding, the concept of novel code, bringing all of this stuff that cannot be collaborative and this, log pile of nonsense, like code that's only applicable to your organization because you're afraid of open source? That's just going to be a disaster down the line, too.
That sounds awful because 'cause you're just gonna end up owning everything, and
Owning it
it would be
all.
terrible. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't think that's gonna work. But yeah,
No.
it is it's almost like a tragedy of the commons, isn't it? Where
Mhm.
we're just gonna end up with too much stuff. Um,
It is. Too
uh,
much stuff.
yeah. I don't know what the
And
solution is for this. I honestly, I don't know ho how we tackle this problem going forward. It's gonna be interesting because the glib answer is just to say, "Oh, we can use AI to solve this problem." But I really feel like that's just adding yeah, at some level, you have to have people looking at stuff and,
you have to, the human
skin in the
element is
game.
still very
Yeah,
real.
Yeah.
And then, going back to what you were discussing too, when the rise of the developer itself, like the count of developers that are I like to call it developers in the wild, like that
Mm.
count's not going up exponentially with the curve.
No, and we've just turned
It
off the tap because
Mhm.
nobody can get an entry level job now because
Yep.
they've been vibe coded out of a job. I'm really
Yeah.
worried that just going back to we were talking about the regulations as well, like
Mhm.
the rate at which regulations are growing in the EU and the US is exponential. And there's going to be like some vibe coded like laws soon, isn't there?
Oh,
We're going to
yeah, there's
see
usually
like
5 well, I mean, it probably happened in the United States first, I'm not gonna lie.
there'll be like a government with there'll be M dashes all over like the government legislation, and
I
it'll say things
can't.
like, It's not this, it's that."
I love it when people are like, "I wrote this blog," and they hand it to me, and I'm just like,
You did
"It's
not
just
write
full of
that,
M dashes
right?
and green checkbox emojis." Like, you
Yeah,
don't tell me that you wrote this. Like, I appreciate the
yeah.
effort. Like, because going back to AI, we were talking about AI models. I was like, "Did you research this model?"
Mm,
No, I'm just like, you used the model to write your blog that you didn't research on what it did and what it was useful for, right? And then there's also too another thing that we got to talk about with AI as well. These models are incredibly intelligent, right? Depending on how you use it. But the education on what models to use for when and what to produce for when is really important to understand as well. Right? But
yeah,
that would be something to factor in, maybe a revisit of the maturity model later down in the next few years to kind of see what the heck has happened with the
yeah.
rise of the AI overlords and see what, we go through there.
Well, that problem about what model to use when is a bit like the problem of what open source library to use when, isn't
Mhm.
it?
It really
Except
is.
that there's only about 20 models, whereas there's billions of open source libraries
Exactly.
at the
It's
moment. At the moment.
You know what? I just set that up for you. You just knocked it down, man. You just knocked that out of the park. I didn't even mean to do that, but good. No, you're absolutely right. Good job. It's
Right.
true.
Okay.
What model to
So,
use and when? I'm gonna use. You
yeah.
know what? I'm using that in one of my next meetings. That's good.
Okay. All right. Go for it. Write that down.
Yeah.
We're just going to add some sound effects in here of you writing now. So that
No, I'm just.
I'll get my Foley artist on it so that we got the
Thank you so much.
right.
Like choosing open source. I love that.
Uh,
It's
so what?
it's. I want it to be an opportunity.
Mm,
And how to phrase it and change it into an opportunity, I think is gonna be one of the biggest victories that you could possibly do, and I'm definitely noodling on that.
yeah.
I just maybe, I'll let you know when I have a clear, concrete idea.
So go on then. Let's move on to what would you say to new people wanting to work in like an open source program office or open source management, or how what career advice would you give? Or
If I'm gonna be really honest with you, I say go for it. If
yeah.
there's a position out there, I
Yeah.
honestly, if there's a position out there and there's a position available, go for it.
Yeah.
And
It's a
and
good
I'm gonna be
yeah.
very candid. Is it sustainable in the long term? I cannot answer that question. I don't
Yeah.
know. I really don't know. But I will say that being in this field for, the past 10 plus years, I don't oh god. No, it hasn't been 10 years. No. Okay, whatever. It's X amount of years that I've been doing this, which hasn't been really that long compared to like that of my peers. I have learned so much in such a
Yeah.
short amount of time. I have upskilled so much. I have found this like love of just like something that I care about, like software, which I never thought I would. Like I studied classical guitar and mandolin when I first went to college and
Huh.
was a school teacher, right? And I taught kids for a few years. And then I just fell ass backwards into technology and then somehow ended up in an open source program office because some Nithya Ruff took a chance and hired me. And and it has been one of the most rewarding yet challenging facets of my career, like of my formative,
Yeah.
career life. And is it a risk to be in an OSPO? Yeah, it is. For
Right.
stability, it is, and it shouldn't be.
But I think you're right. You're on the like cutting edge of stuff happening, and
And the
you also
people,
have the community side of it, and you get to meet all sorts
yes,
of super talented people that know
I
what
have
exactly what they're
done
doing.
more in this field than I would have ever done in past fields, right?
Yeah.
I have met more cool people, like I said, with cool kids. Hey, cool kid club, right? I have met more wonderful people, and the doors have been like open to learning. I don't know. I would say if anybody wants to get involved in open source, I say go for it.
Right.
Yeah,
So
there's
that's the thing. So if you get an internship offer to you or anything like that,
go
take it,
for it.
because this is like the Peloton of technology training,
The
isn't
the
it?
the
Do you
Peloton
remember?
of
Do you
technology
remember
training.
for
Yes,
the
the
thing about the
diamond of the
bikes that I
bikes.
was talking
The
about?
bikes.
With the
Crisscrossing of
bikes,
the
yeah.
bicycles. Yes.
Yeah,
No, I
that
I
bit.
honestly, I like I said, I came into this today like just being absolutely exhausted. And then, we just keep talking about open source and like how amazing it is and like how risky it is and all the things, right? But it's like it gives you energy. It's just, I don't
Yeah.
know. Go for it. I don't have any complaints. I will say this, you're gonna get an S load of pushback. You're gonna get a lot of people that don't understand. And it doesn't matter. You just stay that course tugboat. You just keep on cruising.
Keep tugging. All
Keep
right.
on tugging
Okay. So
along.
let's wrap this up, Brittany. I want 5 top bands to listen to. Let's have some heavy metal music recommendations, and then
Oh,
any books or blogs or writers or anything else that you want to throw in
okay.
as well.
So I'm gonna be a little bit in the music variety, a little bit all over the map, right?
Let's do it. Yeah.
I'm gonna be because I love my metal, but I'm gonna be a little all
Smorgasbord.
over the map.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
It's gonna be like a little variety. I would say from a fifth perspective, there's this band and they're so good. They're super weird, but they're called Aratsi Pazuzu. They are a Finnish black metal band. They're so good. So good.
Nice. Okay.
So good. All right. I would
I
say
will check that
this is
out.
really hard because I listen to so much music. Um, I would say on an album perspective, I would say Nine Inch Nails with Teeth. Great
Good stuff.
album.
Yeah. All
It's
right.
so good. It's so good. Don't sleep on that one. Let's say number 3.
Oh, hold on. As an aside, have you watched the Neutron film?
I haven't yet, but I have listened to the
Ah,
music. It's pretty darn good.
I really enjoy it just for the music. Actually, it was
Oh
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really care about the actors. Was it Jared Leto? I don't care
Not
about
so
that, but I
much.
always want to
No.
listen. Yeah, I just want to
But
listen to the weird.
it's a great.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the second Tron film as well, like the Tron Legacy, just for the same reason,
Yeah.
because it was Daft Punk doing the music on that, and it's
Mhm.
just like you're just in this sort of sonic space for the whole film. So it's just like a
You
bunch of
know what
stuff
soundtrack
happening. But,
holds up so good? The Crow. The Crow
oh
soundtrack
yeah,
holds up so
okay.
good. Oh my
I need
god,
to check.
it is
I remember watching
absolutely
that a
fabulous.
long time ago. But
So
yeah, all
good.
right,
All
all right.
right.
So hold on,
Oh
number
yeah, MF
3.
Doom. MF
Oh yeah,
Doom, Doomsday.
love it. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
MF Doom Doomsday is absolutely fantastic. That one is just rock solid. Number 2, what have I been listening to a lot lately? I don't even know. I'm all over the map with everything. Always Tom Waits. Can never go wrong
Okay,
with Tom Waits.
good
Tom Waits is
choice.
absolutely
Yeah.
exceptional. And then I don't even know. I'll have to come back to that one. But that's kind of on the rotation. I probably should have female lead. So I'd say really good punk rock band, the Bobby Lees.
All right, nice. Okay,
Female
I
leads,
don't know
really
them.
good.
Yeah.
Blackwater Holy Light, all woman doom band. They're really good. But yeah, and then always, I don't know. I could talk about music forever. Wu Tang, Wu Tang, Protect Your Neck.
Cool.
But yeah,
Cool.
hmm
Any other? Oh yeah. Well, anything you're doing
books.
that
So book wise, I haven't read anything recently, but I got.
for the listeners, Brittany is just removing books from the bookshelf and bringing them back to the table.
Okay,
We're going to go
so this
through
one's always good. The
Wu
Wu
Tang.
Tang Manual.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's written by the RZA. It's really, really good. Wu-Tang, right? It's good. I mean, it's really cool. So this I just got. So it's the MF Doom, the Unraveling the Mask,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Nice. Because he
I'm
died not
super
long ago,
excited about
didn't he?
this. Yeah, he died quite a few years ago, but yeah, I'm really excited to get into
Was it?
this
Oh,
one.
really? Was it quite a long time ago? It just feels like not that
I
long
mean, like
ago.
I was living in Philly at the time, so this is
Okay.
a horror novel that I'm going to start.
Okay. Yeah.
Basically, I think it's a vampire book. I don't know, but it's pretty scary sounding, and I wanted to read it during the snowstorm, but I never got around to it. Work,
Yeah.
Jim Thompson, great, fantastic author. Quick
Okay.
read, really amazing. Texas by the Tail is like a really cool book about like dice games, and it all takes place in like Texas and Oklahoma, and it's just Jim Thompson. He's absolutely fabulous. Read him. And then I just got this one. Everybody told me it's amazing. So I got this for Christmas, A Confederacy of Dunces.
Oh,
So yeah,
I've
I
heard of
guess
it. Yeah.
this be absolutely fabulous. Jonathan Kennedy Toole. So I will be um Madcap Adventures in New Orleans. So yeah, I'm gonna get down to these.
Nice.
Yeah, but Wu-Tang Manual is just a staple. Just have it on your bookshelf. It's great.
I saw them a few years ago in concert, actually, in
So good.
Southampton. Yeah, really
One
good.
time I saw
Yeah,
Ghostface, like a
surprisingly.
hawk came, a falcon came and got on his arm, and I was like, "Whoa,
Bloody hell. Okay.
Wu-Tang."
All right. Anything else you want to talk about or say or advertise? Or
Honestly, I don't have anything to, like, really advertise. I don't have anything upcoming. I don't know. I would just say the most important thing is, like, we're living in really tricky times right now, and we all know that. So just be cool, be nice to everybody.
yeah,
Remember, like, if somebody's kind of a jerk to you and that they're, they're probably just going through something too. I know it's really hard, but ignore,
yeah,
and
yeah.
get off social media. Just delete it. Just be done with that
Good
shit.
plan. Yeah,
Yeah, honestly, I've been off of it now for I look at LinkedIn every once in a while, but social media, dude, it's toxic.
yeah. It's a slippery slope, isn't it? I think that's the problem. I mean, I have to be quite
Yeah, and then you
careful.
just end up, like, looking at it and looking at it. It's like you're
Yeah,
not getting I did enjoy when I was on social media, though, like, new restaurants that were opening up, right?
yeah.
I
Right.
thought that
Okay.
was cool. I was like, "Ooh, that's fun." Or, like, when bands were coming to town, I was like, "Oh, cool. Okay, I know that now there's a
Mm.
tour." Now I look at my email. I know.
Oh
I'm not
yeah. Well,
old,
I've
I
got one for
swear.
you then. I've got one for you that
Mhm.
which is a website that my friend Dan has recently started called Gig Totem. I'm gonna see
Oh,
if I can
cool.
find it. And what it is, gigtotem.com. I'm not sure if it runs in the US, but basically it's just flyers for music events. And so
Oh,
you
that's
can
cool.
yeah, so basically you can find music in whatever region you're in and see
Oh, that's
what's
cool.
playing.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, what band am I going? I got concert tickets I'm going to see. Oh, Pussifer. Pussifer. They're one of
Oh
my
yeah,
favorite bands of all time. Pussifer and Tool. They're absolutely exceptional. There it was. It took me a second,
there
but I'm
you
going to
go.
see them in a couple of weeks, and yeah, I get to see Aranzi Pazuzu.
I'm
But
not
yeah,
aware of it. Okay, I'm gonna have to listen to that. Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for doing this, Brittany. This has been really fun. I've had a great time, and
good. I'm so glad. I hope
it's been a laugh.
good. I hope I
We,
answered
we
some of
we
the
we
questions
covered some ground though,
intelligently.
right? We covered some
I
ground.
hope so.
We
I
said
think
some clever
so.
things. Yeah, that's the main thing. Yeah.
I Yeah, you and you Brits. I think all of it was clever, Rob. All of it was pretty
I'm
clever.
undercutting us. All right.
I know.
Thanks, Brittany. This has been brilliant. I'm gonna press the stop button now.
Sweet.